I'm here to talk about place values for numbers and also how to decide if you are going to round up or keep the same when you are doing some rounding rules. I'm outside and it's kind of noisy out here, but that's okay. If you're talking about place values, this would be the ones place. And if I wanted to put this in here, this represents the number 3. Now there's a decimal point after that. You always, any whole number, if it's 3, the decimal point goes on the back of it. So if you're ever worried about it, you need to know the decimal point goes on the back of that number. So this is the number 3. That's in the ones place. Now if I added a number in the tens place, now this number becomes 13. Because the decimal point means that's when we're getting into the decimal. So 13 is 1 and 3. So we know the hundredths place and the thousands place. So if I put a number in the hundredths place, the 6, now my number is 613. So I have 6 100ths, 1 10, and 3 ones. So this is 613. Decimals stand for numbers within numbers, so I'm going to say the ones place is a 0, but I can have numbers between 0 and 1, and we have some place values for those. So if we have the 10th place. If I say this is 2 tenths, that's 2 tenths, reads as 2 tenths, that would be like 2 tenths, which is also a fraction, but it is 0.2 tenths place. 2 of those tenths. The next place value is hundredths. And if I had a 3 there, right now this reads as 0.23, but it also reads as 2 tenths and 2 hundredths, but more commonly we'll call it 23 hundredths. And in class, just to keep it straight, it was like 0.23. If you do 23 hundredths, that's an easy way of turning it into a fraction, and that's how you would do a fraction, you just really say it. But 0.23 is 23 hundredths. You think I'm going to have a 4, but I'm not in the thousands place. It's actually a 2. So now it's 0.232, and that means 2 tenths, 3 100ths, and 2 and thousandths. And the way you say it is, you say whatever the last number is, what's underneath there, that's how you'd say that. So this would be 232 thousandths. 0.232 is the same as 232 thousandths. This one reads as 0.79, so you just like 79 hundredths. So that's how you'd say it, 79 hundredths. This one reads as 34, 3 tens, and then 4 ones. So that's just a number 34. The decimal point, when you say these, you'll say 34 and 3 tenths. Perfectly fine to say 34.3 when we're doing it, but for place values, this is the tenths place. Tenths place, the first one after the decimal. Second one after the decimal, hundredths place, so tenths, hundredths, thousandths, just multiplying by 10, just like we have tens, hundreds, thousands, it's just going to go in the opposite direction. 7 ones, 2 tenths, 3 hundredths, and 9 thousandths. I'm sorry, that's 0 hundredths, 9 thousandths. So it would be 7 and 209 thousandths. So it's always the last one, that's what you call it. So it's 7 and 209 thousandths, or 7.209. We're going to do a little rounding. This one would be 7 and 31 hundredths. So 7 and 31 hundredths. I want to round it to the nearest tenth. I'm sorry, I'm going to change my number to 7 and 36 hundredths. So 7 and 36 hundredths. I'm going to round to the nearest tenth. Now when you say rounding, rounding means you're going to figure out like the tenth, whatever one they want it to round to. I'm just going to put a little marker there. That's the one that I want to round to. So I'm going to round to this tenth space. I want to know which is closer in this tenth space. Is this closer to 3 or is it closer to 4? Well, we already know it's 3, so we have to look at the number next to it. So if I'm rounding to the 10th place, I look at the 100th place. So I'm going to look at this one to decide if this is going to be a 3 or if it's going to be a 4. Now, it changed once the thing fell down, but that's okay. So we find the 10th place right here, and I look to this one, the 100th place. If this is a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, or a 9, that means it's going to be closer to 4. So let's just think about it. It's 36. Is 36 closer to 40? Or is it closer to 30? It's going to be closer to 40. I know that sounds a little confusing, but if you look over here at this number, and if it's a 5, a 6, a 7, 8, or 9, it actually is going to make it closer to 4/10 than to 3/10. So if that's the case, I'm going to say, okay, this is closer to the 4/10. Since I'm rounding it, I get rid of it. I don't need it anymore, but I do need to replace this with a 4. So 7.36 rounded to the 10th place. Look at the 10th, move it over. Decide this is 6, so it needs to go up to this next one. It becomes 7.4. This number is 2.14, or 2 and 14 hundredths. So type 14 hundredths. So it's 2 and 14 hundredths. I want to round again to the nearest 10th place, so I'm going to look at the 10th place. So I'm rounding to the 10th place. I put my marker there, and I look to the right. The next number next to this 10th place that I want to round it to. I look to the right, I see the 100th place. There's 4 there. So I have to ask myself a question. Is this closer to this 1, or should it be closer to, and I make this 2? Since it's a 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, all are closer to this number than the 2. So since this is a 4, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4, it's closer to the 1, so rounded, this is 2.1. Now for the real number would be 2.14, 2 and 14 100ths, but if I want to take it to the 10th place for rounding, I look at the next number. This is 4, it's closest to 1, it stays the same. For this one, this is 60.8, or 60 and 8/10. Now this time I'm going to round it not to the 10th place. I'm actually going to round it to the nearest 1's place. And this might be also said rounded to the nearest whole number. This would be the whole number without the decimal point. So if this is 60, they want to round it to the nearest whole number. Is this closer to 60 or 61? But if we just use our regular rules to say, okay, we found our place value, we look to the number to the right of it, and then we decide if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, this number stays the same. But if it's 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, this number will go up to the next number. Since it's 8, this number goes to the next number. So I'm rounding, I can get rid of this because it's closer to 61. 213. So 213, and it's 0.874, so I would say 874 thousandths, because that's underneath. So 874 thousandths. And I want to round it to the nearest 1's place. Now, you might say, like, hey, there's a lot of numbers back there. You don't have to worry about those numbers. All we really have to do is look at this number right now in this situation. So this number in this situation, it's 8. I'm not worried about these two. I'm only want to change this number because I want to round it to the nearest whole number or the nearest 1's. So I just look over here and I see that I have an 8. It's 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. It goes up, so it's going to go to the next number, and since this is 3, it becomes 9, and that one rounded up, so it's 214. This one I have 1.06, and I want to round this to, not though necessarily to the 1's place, because it's actually going to be close to 1, but I'm going to round it to the 10th place this time. So I want to round it to the 10th place. So, oh wait, it's 0. How can I do that? You still can do it. You look at the number next to it. It's a 6. Is it more than 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9? Yeah, it's a 6. So this one This 0 is actually going to go to the next one, and that becomes 1.1 is rounded. So 1.06 is rounded up to 1.1. Rarely will you see one like this, but if you have 161 and you wanted to round it to the nearest hundredths place, they could ask you that. You could round to the nearest hundredths place if you're, especially if you're multiplying to make it a little bit easier. So I would just say, oh, okay, let's look at the number next to it. It's a 6. So if it's greater than, if it's 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, it's actually closer to 2. So we do know that 161 is closer to 200. It seems to make sense. So that becomes 200. And then I have to put zeros in, and there they flew away. So there's one of them. And then it would have to be another 0 to help me out. And who knows where that is, because they all flew away. Hopefully that clears some of these things up.